Cool music.
All right, let's do this.
How's it going?
Good. How are you doing this morning?
Good. Good.
What do you got today?
So I found a random question online
Yeah.
and it made me think of you.
Okay.
So I'm gonna ask it.
Okay.
It might be easy, might be difficult. I don't know. But it's technology related, so that's a Joe Danyi question. Can
Okay.
you think of any technology that has only made the world worse?
Any technology that has made
It has
All right.
only made the world worse.
Define worse.
I guess there's just no benefit. It's I don't know. I guess it's whatever you think. Like my first thought went to social media, but I don't think it's only made the world worse. I think there are some benefits to social media. So I don't know.
Yeah, it's a little too subjective of a question. I guess you could take something and give it, like you can take something
Somebody
that
said the internet. Yeah.
you can take a list of saying here's your net gain, here's your net loss on it, like a biological weapon, for instance, like anthrax, right?
Mm-hmm.
So anthrax is probably pretty bad because people died and it's used as a weapon against people. But has anthrax ever developed? Because we developed anthrax, did we develop then a cure for something, or did we solve some kind of problem? So I think pretty much everything, even if it had some fallout, like there was some collateral damage on it, I think it has some benefit. So as much as, as Stephanie said, the internet, I'm going to say that's heavier on the made things better, but there's always going to be some bad things that come. That's just part of change.
Yeah, that's why I'm like something that's only worse. This is going to sound so ridiculous, but this my second invention that popped in my head,
What?
The Roomba.
The Roomba?
I'm sure there are good things that the Roomba can be used for, but I don't own a Roomba. I don't know. I've never really used one, but from what I've heard, like obviously doesn't know. The Roomba, for anyone who doesn't know, is the little round vacuum that just automatically goes over your house. So I've heard of it like running through things and just spreading dirt or crap everywhere, or sucking things up that you didn't want it to, or an animal's tail maybe getting caught into it. I don't know if anyone has a Roomba and they love it.
Yeah, and that's why it's subjective, because it's basically depending on who you're talking to, right? And people are self-interested and selfish, so how they are affected by it. And regular people should not be at the controls of anything at all. Like regular normal people should not be making decisions on things, right? You need innovators and forward-looking people and people who can really calculate, the mathematics of things, because they would, if they were like, here's an invention and I can't make any use of it, it's not worth developing, without considering that somebody is making use of it and it's making their life better, and it's a stepping stone in the development of other things. I think we're too short-sighted, too self-interested, and too selfish to give normal people controls. I mean, half of me thinks that most of the people that vote shouldn't be anywhere near a voting booth.
Oh, yeah?
They don't have enough knowledge. They're skewed and swayed. They're doing it based on, marketing and emotion and whatever. They're not making good decisions on voting. So why would we have everybody voting rather than saying, you know what, maybe I'm not smart enough to vote. Let me give my vote to somebody who knows stuff, and then let smart people vote. And then maybe you have, would you feel like if you're being governed by stuff, but you didn't vote for it, would you be willing to go along being governed by people that you don't agree with? I mean, a lot of people are in that spot right now.
Yeah. And I too, I will admit, I've probably been one of those voters in the past that it was probably based mostly off of emotion. I really like this candidate, they don't tick me off. They seem like a good person. I don't feel really strongly about any policy, so they seem like a good choice, and then.
Yeah. And those are the people that are putting, the executive branch, the legislative branch together. And they, if they do a bad job of it, then the outcome is that we're worse because of it.
Yeah. Meanwhile, you could have a candidate where you're like, God, I'd love to punch this person in the face, but his ideas are probably going to work a little better than someone else's. So you sort of have to look into it, not just vote off.
Yeah.
Of
So
emotion.
I mean, even like right now, the Trump administration is doing a lot of things that the people who lost the election, right, don't agree with, and they don't know how to lose and just say, well, next time maybe we'll vote harder and whatnot. And so, but when the other side was sitting on the sidelines and knowing they were completely out of power and they watched a lot of things they disagreed with, then they were just kind of like calculating their next move on getting elected so that when they're in the power, they can do that kind of stuff. And so, yeah, I mean,
I keep seeing people post on Facebook like every day. The people that hate Trump are just posting, and the people who support Trump are too. But the ones that are complaining all the time, I keep thinking like, are we really going to do this for the next 4 years? Like every day.
Yeah.
Oh, it's rough. It's rough. And part of me is like, I don't want to ever be one of those people that are like, you voted the way I didn't, and you see things differently. And so I hate you and I'm going to cut you off and I'm going to block you and blah, 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 because I think it is important to see other people's views and hear how they are dealing with things and what affects everyone. But at the same time, it's like, all right, results are in, it is what it is. And it's going to be a long 4 years if all you're going to do is complain.
Well, what we have to do though, and this is not going to happen. I mean, we're on a direct path to a civil war, a direct path, because the people that lost, okay, let me just set the stage for this. The people that lost are highly emotional. They can't say, we'll survive this, and then when we're in power, we'll just fix this up. They're saying the world's going to end. The devil's in charge. The emotional version of this is the, completely over exaggerated version of this.
Evil is taking over.
So if you have half the people that are thinking that the earth is coming to an end, or the country is coming to an end, they're going to keep ratcheting up their emotional outbursts about what's happening. Now, it's not going to get better. We're just getting started on the things that they don't like are going to be more numerous, faster, exacting change for over the next freaking 2 years, right? You think those people are going to be like, all right, you know what? I got all my emotion out. I'm just going to sit down and take it easy. No, they're just going to keep escalating it, right? And like they're throwing Molotov cocktails and shooting up cars and rioting. Like
wait, the people that are all for peace and love and acceptance,
that contradiction is not landing. Okay. They are escalating. And so it's going to take some rational person in that group to say, all right, come on. We use the inflammatory language because it was political beneficiary. We weren't really serious. Like, settle down a little. We'll get through this and whatever. Nobody is saying that. Nobody's talking people back from the ledge. So those normies out there who are completely ignorant to how things are going, those voters who just shouldn't have been allowed to vote, are now enraged about how the evilness is taking over. You don't think they're going to keep stepping it up?
And really, if you look at like results and polls and things of that nature, correct me if I'm wrong, it's not even half. It's less than half. More than half of Americans are pretty okay with all the results of things going on. So less than half of the population is fired up and thinking evil is taking over the world.
And let me tell you, the rest of the stage setting and what's really going to make things unglued is next. I'll tell you about that in a minute. But why does it seem, if it's such a minority of people who are acting out this way, why does it feel like it's louder and bigger of a group than it actually is?
That was going to be my question.
Okay. This is the second part of this.
Okay.
So you've heard about the paid protester deal, right?
Like the what is it?
NGOs,
yeah.
Okay, so you have these big financiers, right, that are bought in, and they're basically insiders, right? And what they do is they use their money to be able to pay people as their job to be professional protesters. And maybe they have a group of 1,000 people that they bus into an event, and you have some natural people that show up, and then you have the professional protesters that show up. Well, the professionals know how to get the people incited and fired up and ready to go, having pallets of bricks shipped to a place and then set the stage for the natural people to throw it through a window. But the professional people get them to do it. Like, they leave the door open so they make things more probable to happen.
Instigate a little bit.
So if you wanted to create some theater, right, you would pay people that know how to do it to set up those deals. Now, the things that are becoming unwound, all right, I don't think people really admit how much Democrat control that captured institutions. Okay. Mm-hmm. So at one point, all of media was captured by Democrats, right? Mm-hmm. And so these high financiers that were making protests happen, they were also making sure that the narratives on the media were there.
Yeah. I was just going to say they work with the people that will then highlight it. And
okay. So they captured media. So they captured the, the inauthentic protests. They captured the media. Then they created institutions in government like USAID that would basically be able to channel in money and do things that the government really wasn't allowed to do, but it was captured by Democrats. That's why when these cuts are happening, Democrats are most mad, right? Because they were paying for support of their campaigns and their people and their advocacy through the channels of now protests, media, and charitable organizations.
Also bringing in a lot of outsiders, aka voters for them.
Okay. Now you have the Department of Justice. You had the FBI that was doing the bidding for Democrats to go after the opposition. You had universities who were being funded by those same things, right? Mm-hmm. To indoctrinate the next generation of people who would be voters. Then you had the institution of open borders where we're going to channel in people. So all of this big mountain, like I can't see how Democrats lost a single election with so much of the institutions that were captured by their money and their influence and their narratives. You break all of that up. I don't think a Democrat, if they're able to do this in 2 years, I don't think a Democrat wins an election because all of the things that made them win in the past, because I'm telling you, their policies just aren't as good as you think they are. It's the reality TV of politics. Most of the support for this was not real, and it only seemed real because of how many institutions they freaking own. But you get rid of that, they're dead. They're dead.
Yeah, and then they made it even worse. They almost sort of shot themselves in the foot where anybody who was still sort of on their side, I guess, so to speak, rooting for them, like-minded, the moment anyone questioned something or said, I don't know about this. What about this? This seems a little off. Anytime it was not, yes, whatever you say, we're all in, we support you, then you're like the outsider. Then you're banned. Then you're shunned. And it's like, that I think is when a large group of people were like, what the heck is that? Like, what are you talking? I saw it myself where I've always been around a family and a friend group that was probably more liberal and maybe more towards the Democrat side, a little more left leaning. And the moment the right started to make more sense, or maybe not even right, maybe just the middle, maybe the libertarians, people started being like, hey, I feel like we should really listen to these people. They've got some good points. What did the left do? You're gone. Screw you. You're a terrible person. I can't believe you. You're awful. Evil's taken over the world. And it's like they almost just pushed you out, made it easier to want to go elsewhere.
Yeah. And Stephanie says the pot stirrers, the one lighting the fire, the one putting the ingredients, the one who makes the recipe, and the one's watching. And so, like I said, I don't think they win an election. I think they're going to get more unhinged as they lose a lot of the mechanisms that allowed them to be elected in the first place. I don't know. They overplayed their hand is what they did. Mm-hmm. And emotional people will always do that. If you want to set up the liberals and the activists, the fringe side of things, just let them feel like they have the power. And then they'll always go too far. And the 50% in the middle will get to a point where like saying, now you went, they'll know and when you lose the support of those middle, they don't necessarily go to the fringe to the other side. They just bow out of being able to support you because now you've done it.
Yeah.
But the fringe people think that you were on their side the whole time. So when you start lighting cities on fire, you think they're going to come and join you and be just as outraged. But those middle people don't get outraged to that. level.
Yeah.
They'll be like, they'll agree with you, say, yeah, racism is bad, right?
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, okay, well, we got a bunch of people that are support us that racism shouldn't exist. But then they'll like take somebody hostage and torture them because they were racist, and like, whoa, dude,
You're like too far.
way too far. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so that all of the table is set for the conservatives and Republicans to skew this too far in the other direction. And I don't know if the Republicans have a version of overplaying their hand. I'm sure they do, and I'm sure they will do that. And I think that's the only thing that swings the pendulum back to the other side. But I see no good in any of this.
Yeah.
Okay. I think if we did this more methodically, where we moderated things over a longer period of time, we'd have a better chance of there not being chaos and crisis. But just so much stuff so fast, and you can argue that it's necessary to go fast and do this kind of change, but man, it's going to be a disruptor.
Oh, it is. It is. And I keep saying, not to bash the media, but here we are again. And it's not all media. It is not. But you do have those organizations that are very biased and very one-sided, and they just sort of help push it along. Did you happen to see any of the Trump's press secretary's address yesterday? She took a question from the Associated Press, and he got kind of snippy and she got kind of snippy back. Do you like seeing that sort of that, like, I would say she almost, whereas some people would maybe stay a little, what's the word, subdued maybe, and just sort of answer it and let it go. I feel like Carolyn, leave it, whatever her name is, will sort of dig back. Like, you're being an a-hole right now. You're being ridiculous. I'm not putting up with this. Do you like seeing that?
So so the media's job in the press pool is to gather information and push back on power. That is their job. They being bullied or being the bully is not their job. Okay. But when a question is asked, you look at, why did that person ask the question? They want a right to inform the people about something that's happening. If the government's not being transparent, they dig into it, and they're allowed to be mean to be able to get to truth. The people in that room have been insulated from what their job actually is. And nobody really, we love when a politician gets beat up, right?
Mm-hmm.
But then you do that. And then I also love when a press pool person gets beat up, because they're doing the same shit.
Yeah.
Now, I think the danger in that is that if there isn't a sort of like an unspoken rule of decorum, I know you want to know stuff, and I know that you're going to want to dig into it. And as long as the questions don't have narrative behind it, where you're not trying to like box me in, I'm not going to try to box you in. But if you play that game with me, where the reporter wants to be a superstar and make the story about them, and they're going to get the clip that they were mean to the president, rather than, you asked a question that you're not going to really write an article about because you didn't get the answer that you wanted, then your whole job is just to fabricate, discontent and be an opposition in the worst way. I want you to be an opposition to lies. Okay. That kind of thing.
Oh yeah. Like the guy, the snarky reporter in the Oval Office, when Trump and Vance and Zelensky were sitting there and they had their heated discussion and everything came from that ordeal. The whole issue that was made over what Zelensky was wearing. And don't you own a suit? Why would you come to the White House and have a meeting and not wear a suit? That was a reporter.
Pause right there.
Yeah.
Okay. So a real reporter, right?
Mm-hmm.
So here you got the regular question, then you got the passive aggressive question. I would think that a professional reporter, that if they wanted to know something, they wouldn't passively aggressively insult you to get their answer. They would just ask the thing that they want to know.
Mm-hmm.
You don't wear a suit and everybody else does. Do you have a reason that you don't wear a suit? That would be a professional reporter that just wanted for an answer. But if they want to be the center of it, they're like, jabbed you. They shouldn't be jabbing.
And he does. That reporter, I think his name was like Brian Green or something. He then went on to other news organizations that wanted to interview him to be like, where were you going with that? You knew that was a snarky remark, right? And he's like, oh, you didn't mean it to be snarky. And he got a lot of attention, even in that the press address that the press secretary did yesterday. He was standing next to another reporter asking a question in the room. And if you're watching it on YouTube, you see all these people start commenting on him. They now recognize him. And I'm like, that's what that dude wanted. That dude was in it for himself, for the attention. I think he was sucking up to Trump a little bit because they're more of a right organization. And that kills me. I'm like, do people not see what the media does?
Yeah. So that they should start off every press briefing with what this is, a reminder of what they're supposed to be doing there. And honestly, if it were me and I'm press secretary, any question that didn't have a relevance for telling a story or writing an article, I would hit a button, right? I would dismiss the question, and a new reporter would come in, someone who takes their job a little bit seriously, right?
Yeah.
But the thing is,
eject button.
Yeah, exactly right. And you know, if the red meat, the primitive primal, viewers that think the job is to throw shoes at the administration because they don't like them, and that's their weapon in the room, right?
Yeah.
Those people should be ejected because they are not there for the intended reason, which is ask hard questions that are difficult to answer, collect the truth, and put it in their publications. If it's not of that, they're gone. Give someone else a chance.
And I'm seeing the same thing, not just with like media and reporters, but with those Facebook people and the left maybe. And I made a post one time on Facebook, and it was like, to all the keyboard warriors and armchair quarterbacks, if you think you can do a better job, by all means, go ahead. And someone's like, what are you talking about? We are allowed to criticize the president. It's our job to criticize. And I'm like, you're right. Absolutely. Criticize, question, look into things. But some people are almost doing that very thing where you're not actually trying to find answers. You're not actually looking into anything or even criticizing. You're complaining because you don't like the person, is what you're doing. And you're throwing out things like they're stupid. They don't know how to do this. Like you do. Like you can be better than someone in the position, or something more. To me, that's doing the same thing.
Yeah, we've lost our way in this, because if you look at universities, you look at the faux student, the address the other night where Al Green got it, made a stink, and we've lost our way because we've combined two things: your freedom to express yourself in the proper way, right? So does a college student have a right to disagree with the way that the administration is doing something? Absolutely. And there's a place and there's a mechanism that if you disagree, that you go air your grievances in the proper channels, in the proper mechanism. But these spoiled idiots, right, think that freedom of speech, they can do it anywhere and you have to listen to them. So if the State of the Union, the faux State of the Union the other night was the mechanism was for the president to share what was going on, what was going to happen, then obviously it was not a bi-directional meeting where Al Green was not there to share his opinion. If Al Green wants to, he gets podium time, right? So when he's got podium time, now it's time to say the Al Green stuff. Now he has the freedom of speech to say it's not both. I have the freedom of speech and I can say it whenever and wherever and, and
I can
whoever.
shut you up
exactly.
To say my piece.
That's the difference there.
Yeah.
And so if the college student wants to block traffic to show there, that's the freedom of speech to air your grievances, but not when rush hour traffic to stop traffic. That's where we get disconnected.
Yeah, because if you get run over by a car, whose fault is that? And I know a lot of people are going to be like, oh, it's not just the one side. I've seen a lot of videos too, where when Biden would give his addresses, you'd have that, what's her name? Marjorie Taylor Greene, somebody. And a couple other women were yelling and catcalling and things of that nature. Yeah, it's not one-sided. They both do it. But yes, to your point, it's like, what is it you think you're doing here? Is this your protest stage, or is this maybe for a different time? Especially when each side is going to spout off about we're reaching across the aisle and working together and coming together for a good. It's like, you don't even let the one side talk. All those things are pep rallies for whoever's in office. It's like the night before a big sporting game where both sides are just, giving each other trash talk and whatnot. And it's such a ridiculous scene.
Again, it's manipulated, inauthentic theater where the person is so selfish. They want everybody to pay attention to them. They think their words are more important than somebody else's. And when the camera's on and it's a big audience, they go into performative mode and do their thing.
Yeah.
And like Marjorie Taylor Greene, and then who's that dude that said you lie during Obama's speech? Same shit.
Yeah.
Not the proper mechanism. Yes, you had something to say, but wait your turn and have your conference. The problem is that not as many people would show up for your conference. You'd have much less people, and that would be authentic. You want more attention? Don't hijack somebody else's day. Right?
How about the protesters that yell out during like the Senate confirmation hearings? I know there was one during RFK. There might have been one during when the woman who's now in the education department, I can't think of her name. I see those too, and I'm like, what were you going for here? This is the room of people that are already deep into whatever they want to believe and however they want to feel. You're not even heard by the public in this setting. Maybe somebody watching might have heard some yelling in the background. But again, everybody is so already deep rooted into what they choose to believe. I don't even understand what these people think they're going to accomplish with this stuff.
None of it, though. It's college students in a campus making a sign and chanting. What the frick does that do?
Yeah.
Like, what? At the end of the day, you wasted a day, got in people's way, wasted a lot of materials, and there's not a single person that was like, "Oh, you know what? I'm going along." You convinced me. There's no persuasive value in that.
And then you know what happens when you say things, because I got myself into this too. I'll say things like, "Well, here's what you should do then if you feel so strongly about it."
This is perfect. I'm
like,
loving it.
How about you get involved?
Okay.
You maybe either start going to the meetings. Heck, let's start a campaign for you to run. Let's see what kind of change you can bring on. Let's have you run for office. Let's have you go through the channels of maybe going into a serving position in which you make the change happen and you talk to the rule makers and the lawmakers and I don't know, affect real change. And you know what I get? Well, we're allowed to criticize our government. You're right. You're right. And or somebody will say, well, you know, because of my lifestyle choices, I don't want people digging into that and picking me apart. Okay. You see where I'm going with that?
When you have that conversation, make sure that you give them some proper expectations, because people who are losers and wrong, they don't like the truth that nobody cares a lot about what you have to say. Yeah. So if you go run for office because you want to protect the European squirrels, right? And then nobody pays attention to you, you got to be okay with like, well, maybe my opinion wasn't that important. Maybe the advocacy doesn't have mass appeal, and make sure that if and nobody listens to you, or then they criticize you, that they're okay, that maybe they've just got bad ideas and maybe they should go back to the drawing board, put together some new principles, reinvent, whatever those philosophies are. And when they have broader appeal and more people feel like paying attention, then you don't have to hijack their attention.
Yeah. Like when you keep hearing these people that are like, did nobody take civics class? Or I saw somebody says, nobody cares about the Constitution and how the Constitution works. People, look into this. You don't even know how this works. And I so badly want to be like, it's a moot point, dude. Like, more than half of the country is pro what is happening right now. Do you think they care whether or not it has anything to do with being constitutional? It may not. I don't know. But your argument is falling on deaf ears, and you're just wearing yourself out saying, but look, educate yourselves on the process. They don't care about the process. They like what's happening. Find more material.
I carry a constitution with me. Okay. And do you know how many times, right?
Yeah.
I was educated by someone who probably has never read the stinking document.
Yeah.
And here, and this happens, with the Republic. Everybody becomes sort of an expert in the field when something's going on.
Suddenly we all aced civics and social studies. And yeah.
And I love constitutional debates because they are all just that. The constitutionality of things goes through channels and gets agreement with several different people to figure out if something is constitutional or not. So the dude on social media, right, probably didn't do due diligence on what is constitutional or not. No arguments have been done. We didn't present sides of the story. Yeah. So it has not yet been established, but those debates are always the origin of curiosity. I want to know if something is constitutional. So if, Elon Musk goes into the Department of Education and fires half of the people, right? Mm-hmm. I think that's something that probably needed to be done long ago, but somebody says, hey, I want to make sure this is constitutional. I'm willing to say, yeah, let's make sure this is on the up and up. And I'm hopeful that they have a council that are telling these people what they can do and what they can't do, what they can get away with and what they should steer clear of. And I'm hoping that happens. But what if they didn't? What if they're like, we're going to try it. We're going to fight back against the court. They get to the point where it's unconstitutional. And they're like, okay, we can't do that one. I'm cool with trusting the mechanisms of trialing this out so long that the institutions are honest institutions.
And if you're going to go ahead and pull that card or that lever that this is unconstitutional, make sure you know about what they're actually doing. If someone's like, how come this wasn't deemed unconstitutional? It is. Well, is that actually what they were trying to do? Or did you just get biased information from a news organization that doesn't like him, that is saying, ooh, he could do this. He might be doing this. And now you're like, how can we allow this? It's unconstitutional. Well, maybe because that's not what's happening.
But the strategy is the same strategy. It's another overplaying the hand. It used to be that if you said somebody was racist, you could take the actual meaning of racist and then make something that you did not even racist, but it was effective at saying they're racist and people would react and respond to it. Now the new you're racist is that's unconstitutional. And when anybody looks at it and says, well, was this unconstitutional? Well, no, but it elicited a response from somebody and they'll overplay that's unconstitutional or that's settled science or it's the same thing using a different term. And as long as it's effective, they'll keep doing it until they overplay that hand and they'll move on to another thing.
Yeah. People lose it with me if there is any sort of that name calling, whether it's racist, Nazi, uneducated, you need to go back to civics, anything that is other than, I don't like this game plan. And here's why. Here's why I don't think it'll work. Here's what history has shown us, or here's what I think is actually going to happen with the money or what people might do. The moment it is just, we can't do this and you're terrible. And I don't like this because everyone involved is terrible and everybody's mean and everyone's a bad person. I'm like, to me, that says you actually don't know what you're talking about and you're leading with emotions because you don't like someone. Because a normal person that takes their emotions out of it will say, all right, well, why wouldn't this be a good idea? Or where might we see some hiccups along the way? And what is this going to affect? And you can have an actual discussion and be forward thinking and not just name call and say, this is dumb.
Jerry says it's proven that many people welcome change, but only a small percentage, 10%, any more than that causes extreme uncomfortability amongst the majority. So let's talk economy. Okay, because I want to make some predictions, and they are not good for the Trump administration.
Uh-oh.
Okay.
All
right. So you've been watching stocks and all of that, right?
Not really. I've been hearing about it, but I don't watch them.
Okay. So let's just say you had a neighbor, and the neighbor was struggling, and so you start giving your neighbor $2,500 a week. All right. And so your neighbor is able to buy things and live comfortably and whatever. And a year later, all the conditions are the same. And you're like, no more $2,500 for you. Now, the way that your neighbor lived, was it authentic?
Was it authentic?
Was it authentic? With you giving them money and how they lived and the things they did, were all of those things authentic? No, the only way that they happened is because you gave them the money.
Yeah.
Now, if you remove the money, it will return to its authentic state, which means that all the things they were doing, since they didn't improve the foundation of those things, they're just going to drop back down to where it was all along. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So the economy for the last decades has been inauthentic, right? It has been propped up by illusions of everything. So for instance, if we needed a good jobs report, right? And all I did was go and hire 100,000 government workers. And we don't need 100,000 government workers, but that jobs report's coming out. And if I can slam a bunch of workers into the workforce, even though they don't have anything to do, I'm just going to tell them to sit home. I just needed to count on my report so it looks like we had a good jobs. So now if you say, I just want authentic and let's get rid of all the government workers, right, that shouldn't have been there in the first place, what happens to your next jobs report? Not only is it declining, right? Maybe we're in an inflationary period and there's not a bunch of hiring and it's a new administration, so we're not going on a hiring binge, and we remove a bunch of those workers. What happens to the jobs reports? What happens to their paychecks? What happens to the homes that they had, the economy spending that they had, the stock market that was supported by them putting that stuff into the market? It was really here, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it looked like it was up here. Where do you think all of that stuff's going to head? To its authentic dollar value.
Yeah.
Okay. So for the next 6 months, as we cut those people out of the economy, it's got to rebalance and it's got to go back to where it was before. So if the stock market drops to 30,000 because there's nobody that's inauthentically pumping money into it, the scam that was what it really was, and it just comes back to where things are. That will be good because now people can make educated decisions on how the economy actually is.
Yeah.
But it's going to be bad because that is going to be really bad news. You don't think the Democrats are going to capitalize. They're not going to poke holes in the authenticity, right?
Yeah, for sure. Oh yeah, they're going to see any data that looks bad, that paints a negative picture. Kind of like where a lot of people were saying during COVID, a lot of people lost their jobs. So when we stopped sheltering in place and working remotely and we could go back to work, to say we now created all these jobs, it's a bit misleading.
It was not truthful.
Yeah.
And that's why I say, like, you got to have a lot of logical thinkers in there that can assemble truths and not have, like, if we lost 100,000 jobs and so we basically blame the last administration for the 100,000, but then we hire the 100,000. The logical people are going to say, we just came back to the same position we're at before.
Yeah.
I don't get to claim the benefit of 100,000 that was gone over here, kind of thing. You know what I mean? And that's just that disconnection between logic and math that politics doesn't pay attention to, because there's advantage in not paying attention to it. But then we take 50% of the population and we have them buying into something that has nothing to do with truth.
Yeah, I hear a lot about things with veterans in the VA, and they're making all these cuts and they're firing veterans and they're taking money from this and that. And I'm still looking into it. But what's so interesting is my experience with people that have been going through the VA for things. Not so much here in our area. I've had a pretty good experience with it, but maybe in other parts of the country, I've heard nothing but bad. Everybody says it's incredibly difficult. It's frustrating. They can't get anything they need. They can't even reach someone that is helpful. I've known people that try to go through the VA for healthcare, and I've known people who worked for the VA in office settings, and both of them said it's awful and miserable. So why would we not say, we need to cut what's not working here? We need to make things better here. But if you do that, then all that is saying, oh my gosh, look at the cuts you made. Look at the jobs that you took away from people. You're hurting veterans. And it's like, are they though? Are they? Or was it something bad that can be made better by making changes to it?
Yeah, but you're going to have to make that argument. There's 100% chance that when you cut half of a department, that there is going to be fallout from making that cut. So you have one part that says, don't change it and you won't have any fallout, right? But you'll be overpaying for people who are necessary and hampering the economy. And the other side that says, we're going to cut it, we're going to make some mistakes, and then we'll backfill those mistakes. And in the median, if the people that present it are, you're cutting it and now puppy dogs are gonna die. So you have the middle part that's gonna their support is going to definitely go on the, oh yeah, we shouldn't have changed it. Look at all the crap that happened because of it. So you lose this one. It being that is 100% chance, there is going to be downside risks when you make those cuts. And your argument goes like a 30-day window. If I don't make the cut, fix it, and have a benefit from it, the public's going to be like, oh, they were freaking right. Look at all this bad stuff that happened because of it. And you don't think the people who are opposed to it are going to magnify the crap out of the downside. So you better get really good at magnifying the upside and the good.
Yeah. And anybody that wants to complain, and I know I get heat for this all the time, wants to complain that it's all one-sided. Do you know how much fraud, or I don't know if you want to call it fraud, maybe you want to call it deception, was happening there? I know of people that served in the military in any capacity that went on to lie to the VA about things they did, about injuries they sustained, about problems they're now having in order to get money. That happens a lot, to the point that now the VA, much like the Department of Unemployment, has to almost become more difficult to try to offset some of the fraud that they deal with. There's so much more to things and issues than just someone is going to be an a-hole and make a bunch of cuts for absolutely no reason. I think that's what kills me too, is someone will hear something like cuts to veterans, or veterans losing their jobs, cuts to the VA, blah, blah, blah. And I'm just like, why would someone be so blatantly evil and wrong? If it's blatant evil, wrong, meanness, screw veterans, I hate veterans, let's just make a bunch of cuts to stuff, and you don't think, well, let me look into that. You just go with it. Maybe there's a reason things happen.
And that's why I say that the government should not be in the business of charity and benefits. Number one, they're not good at it. Okay. Large scale, every benefit system is going to have fraud unless you have a good way of ferreting out the fraud. So I had a discussion with a local church. Okay. And they had this program where if somebody in their congregation or in the neighborhood where the church was had lost their job or whatever, they would give them groceries, right? And they did it for a little while, and when it was small, it was easy. But then they had people that seemed to always have a job loss and always be at their door for groceries. And so we were talking about this with one of the pastors, and they were like, I don't want to be taken advantage of. I want to give into this because I don't know that they're whatever. But the contemplation is, how do I make it so that if I'm depriving someone who actually needs it because of someone who is taking advantage of it, I don't want that to happen either. So what should I do? And so in one church with less than probably, 20 people per month as beneficiaries of this program, we had to tie some strings to the people. So it wasn't like show up and get your groceries. It was show up, have a discussion, talk it through, let me give you some advice. Half the people who were taking advantage of it wouldn't sit down for a meeting and go through what they were dealing with, right? So half the people who were taking advantage of it dumped out of the system. Now they were a little bit more certain because the group was small. They knew everybody's name. They knew the situations. They believed their stories, and now they got a handle on it. Multiply that by the government, who wants to get more people dependent on their program. So they don't care if you're taking advantage of the system. And the only people to push back about that is taxpayers, who don't want to pay for something if it's not actually helping the people that it would be. So that's why they'd get out of it. You have to give that responsibility back to smaller local groups who can pay attention and have conversations, not this nameless, faceless, non-meaningless version of it where 50% of the people, if they can get a free buck from the government, are going to take advantage of it, even if they lie. And if you don't care about catching them in the lie, you're going to create more of those people. That's why I say they're not good at it. They need to be out of the business. So if you say, I want to cut the program that kills childhood cancer research, right? I want to kill the program completely. And I want to do it because we're not good at doing it. I want to hand that responsibility down to someone who can develop faster, be more efficient, and give me good results. So I don't want to cut it and make it disappear. I just want to say, acknowledge the fact that we're probably not the right institution to manage this. Let's give it to them so we get better results from someone who's better at this. That would be the intelligence and the logic and the rationale if we actually wanted to get good value for the dollars that we spend.
Yeah. Yeah. So would you keep government sort of in the example of like veterans and VA and stuff? Obviously, we want veterans to see something for their sacrifices. Like if you were injured fighting for your country and that injury is going to now affect the rest of your life, should they be compensated for that, and by who, and how should that work?
Definitely not the government.
Really? Who do you think? How do you think that should work?
There are private wounded warrior. There are private groups that specialize in taking care of veterans. So if I don't suggest the government model after those, because the government's just not capable. Like the complaints you get from the VA is because it's run by the freaking government. It's not great service. You're not getting good value. It's a huge cost, right?
Yeah.
And so what you need to do is hand this over to people who are doing things well. So legislators find people on the private side of things and award them with contracts that do the same thing that government is terrible at, but make it a bid system and make it so that there is sort of like standards of care, standards of cost, right? And then shop them on people who are willing to provide those services better than the government can do. Use government as your sort of like cautionary tale, and any improvement that you can make over the system, use the private sector that is motivated, by competing for those dollars and competing for that service. And anything could be better, honestly.
Do you think that a private sector could be large enough to provide enough support?
Well, that is the argument, but yes, unless you compete against them and you disincentivize them and you punish them and you regulate them, then you hamper the economy. And, every kid coming out of high school or college should see the biggest need in the economic environment and create businesses that solve problems. That's what everybody should do. Not like, oh, there's a problem to be solved, let me chant at the government until they do something about it. Oh, you mean the government that F's up everything that they touch? Yeah, let's give them another responsibility.
How about I get a degree in learning about injustices but not actually do anything?
That's exactly right. We have basically outsourced all of our imagination and our reason to the government that is terrible at everything it touches. Like that is the worst mistake that you can make, because you wouldn't do that in your personal life. You wouldn't take someone in your neighborhood, right?
Yeah.
And is not smart, wastes all their money and makes bad decisions. And we're not like, you know what? I don't feel like doing this. So let's go to Bob down the road, give him all of the power to make decisions on our behalf and all of our money, complain constantly that he does a bad job. But the next time we need something, we go back to Bob and give him we wouldn't do that. That's terrible consumerism.
Yeah.
Julie says the bull in the China shop tactic of Elon is not efficient and unnecessary. I'm all for cutting, but this is not how it should be done. I agree with you that I'm an attrition person as well. And if I felt like you can keep a government climate together long enough to be able to attrition your way out of it, then, I would probably pick that. But if it's, I did this with my front porch, drove my wife crazy, right? So we were going to fix up our front porch, and there were a couple of beams that, were probably rotted and whatever. And there was hornet's nest. And so I went out to fix, and I was going to attrition. I was going to work on this one day, this weekend, the next thing, whatever. When I started making a list of everything that was wrong, there were more things wrong than there were right. So what I did was I propped up the roof and I tore out the entire porch in an afternoon and just went into demolition mode, because I knew I was going to spend more time and resources trying to fix what was there, because it was all garbage. I knew she was going to be mad at me. I knew it was going to be a bigger undertaking in a smaller part of time than I really wanted to deal with. But the spreadsheet said that was the smarter of the choice, right? And that's, why it's not, you can't be as tactful when you do it this way, is almost necessary with as much poison as there was in government. So Julie, I would have preferred it, but I'm telling you, it was rancid, and that was probably not an option that could have worked.
So when people say that, that they don't care for the way Musk is doing things, basically, then am I understanding it that they think it is too much too fast? Is that it? Is it's like, hey, you sort of went in and, like you said, just demoed And maybe it should have been more strategic.
Okay, so if you had an organization, let's just say they had 10,000 employees, right? And we both agree that we have too many. There are people that just don't have any actual work to do. We got too many of them. So if you have 100 too many employees, then you go find the ones that aren't necessary and just fire whatever. If you find out that there are 9,800 unnecessary one and there's only 200, which one would you do? Would you fire a bulk of them? And if you get some wrong, hire them back? Or would you do attrition and go through all 9,000? Well, when you set your stopwatch, how long would it take to methodically go through everyone and find out what's necessary when you know that a majority of them are going to be gone? So it's a calculus. Right?
Especially when you really are on a timeline. Like they don't have forever.
No, they got 2 years to do it.
Yeah.
And so if you have 19 or 200 departments that you got to do the same thing with, as an order of how much stuff can I get done in 2 years, it's almost like you have to do it this way if it's going to be done. If you're cool with getting 25% of the way done, it's going to be a disaster, because you're going to get there, a new administration is going to take over and undo everything that you're going to do. So it almost has to be this way.
If you owned a business and you were just hemorrhaging money and you had a consultant come in and say, you are like hemorrhaging money. This, look at all of this. Like, I can't believe you're even still in business.
Exactly.
This is a real bad thing. So here's what we'll do. Do you want it to end now and we stop the hemorrhaging? Or would you like me to look at this over the next several years?
Exactly.
And I'll slowly start to.
It gives you the indication that
I'd be like, stop the money hemorrhaging.
This is the indication that you have to act fast on this. It was really bad, right? And it doesn't have the timeline to be, nice and calculated and without downside risks, right? You got to pull the Band-Aid off, tackle this thing how it needs to be done, so we can move on to the next thing, because there's 1,000 other ones after this one.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm with it. I wouldn't prefer it this way, but I would not suggest they do it the way that I would prefer. It needs to be done this way.
Yeah. And I mean, again, I can appreciate Julie's comment about saying, she thinks maybe there's a better way to do it. And if she's still on, maybe she could even give us some more information. I'm interested in seeing maybe what people would have done differently if they were in Musk's position, what they think would have been better. I wonder sometimes if it were to go more slowly, and I guess if people think more strategically, maybe, would that also give those that are corrupt more time?
Yes, that's 100%. That's the external factor, that if you do it so quickly, then the strategy against you doesn't have time to formulate. Yeah. And so let's just say I took everything that you did and put it through the courts, and the courts can delay you 4 months, right? Mm-hmm. Well, if you've got 1,000 things to do and each one of them are going to have to be put on a 4-month clock, they could just expire the time so that you weren't able to do anything. And that's exactly what the people opposed to this would do.
Yeah.
And so they're fighting against that too.
Like, I sort of envision almost this like SWAT team. Like, if a SWAT team were bearing down on this criminal organization and this activity in the works, are they just going to pounce and take them down? Or are they going to knock on the door and be like, excuse me, I'd like to see some documentation. And Bill, could you maybe go in he's just going to go in the back window and arrest people who are in that back room. And could you maybe no, that's not how it's going to go.
Absolutely.
It's like, stop them now. Don't let them then, oh, well, we better hide this and we better move this and we better.
Well, that's what did you see USAID, that letter that they put out to all the employees?
No.
So they sent a letter to all the employees. Like, USAID was that organization that they fired a bunch of people.
Yeah.
Well, they sent out a letter to told the remaining employees to start shredding documents.
Oh,
okay.
That sounds familiar.
So if I telegraph to the mob that has a illegal casino in the back, and we send them a letter, hey, I'm going to be raiding your casino on this date. Just want to let you know, give you a 1 week heads up. And then you show up at the casino and there's no casino there anymore. It's a library. And you're like, oh, look, totally legit this whole time. It was just a library.
Yeah.
And then we're like, no, you gave them a week head start. They took all the casino shit, all the stuff that they were doing wrong, and shelved it. And they put on the facade that they were doing legal things. So you gave all these institutions notice that you were going to be coming and slashing through there. Half the crap that we would have discovered if it would have been the SWAT team It's going to be gone. They're going to
Yeah.
have shredded it.
If you work in food service, do you always get a heads up when the health department comes in?
It would be pointless because, like, hey, we started giving everybody a week's notice, and every restaurant's freaking pristine.
Yeah.
How did that happen?
If you could shoo the rats and the mold out before
Take
we
care of
get
it.
there, that would really help you.
Right.
Yeah. Meanwhile, you could just be serving people.
But that's how stupid and slow the government is. And so if you give them a lot of these corrupted agencies, they'll just clean it up when the inspector's there. And when the inspector's gone, they'll go right back to status quo, business as usual.
Yeah.
And so I hope, and in the end, I hope that the Democrats see sort of this executive overreach, and they say, well, the executive branch just has too many power. Look at all the stuff that they were doing, and shorten the executive overreach so that they are more limited into what they can do, which by default shrinks government and what they can do because now the executive branch is limited. I will be ecstatic if that happens. And the idea would have come from the Democrats who expanded the executive branch any chance they got. And now they're paying the consequences because they thought it was a good idea when they were in power. But, executive overreach when the other power's in place, that was a dumb move.
During COVID, did we not just shut it down? Did we strategically, maybe a little of this, maybe a little of this, and then you guys can start getting your affairs in order because we're going to come to you next? No, they were like, shut it down, stay in your house, everything's done. And you're like, oh, crap. And now everyone's like, what do I do about money? What do I do about my job? What am I supposed to do with this and that? Like, if they see something as a major deal, either side will shut it down. It's not like one side's just doing it to be corrupt. If that's the case, aren't they both?
Speaking of that C word, let's
corrupt or COVID.
COVID.
Oh,
we don't say that word. It's a C word.
It's a sissy word.
It's a sissy word. The bad C word. So I would feel better that the government cannot just bring the economy to a screeching halt because they said so. I wanted that be a little bit more difficult than it actually would. Mm-hmm. The only time that I would ever give the government is a real life or death emergency. So I picture the plague, they learned something about it. Now they have to do that. And they basically, that was the nuclear option as far as what they had to do. It had to have been so proven and so unavoidable that they would never in a million years pull that trigger unless it was catastrophic, right? Mm-hmm. And we watched them go through that, but the fabrications on the justifications for bringing all of society to a halt, they were able to muster that, and they were able to sort of like culture that. So my fear, like after, I mean, if it would have came out after COVID that everything was airtight, everybody was spouting the truth, everybody had best intentions, the next time when they say, oh, no, the plague version 2 is coming through, right? How many people are just going to say, yeah, right. Like, I saw what you did last time. I don't believe you this time.
Yeah.
And how many people are going to be like, nope, executive branch, I don't care what you say. I don't care about the shaming people who go out and don't listen to your health rules or anything like that.
Yeah.
And what if it's real the next time and they lost half the support because you freaking fabricated and lied to us the last time around?
Yeah.
That's my real fear.
So Julie did respond. How about the agencies are given a timeline to reduce the number of unnecessary employees and expense?
And I asked this the other day, like, what happens if your lieutenants in those agencies are as corrupt as anything? So if you go to somebody who was laying down cover fire for the corruption, you're going to give them a mandate to do something. And then you're going to, like, if I got to the porch and it was all corrupt, like that, all that would happen is I would give those mandates. It wouldn't happen. And in 6 months, I'd have to do the hard thing anyway. So the faith that you would have that would actually happen would have to be pretty solid. And I don't think that faith was there.
I think that's sort of looking at this almost in the example of COVID. When people started losing their jobs, it wasn't so much like the business owner or the manager or whatever saying, you're corrupt, you've done something wrong, you're being fired, whatever, get out. It was, hey, we're in a difficult situation right now, and here's what's going on, and we're going to let you go. What happens, though, if it is the situation that, hey, you're losing money because of corruption, You're losing money because these people are falsifying things or are stealing or whatever. Do you want to give them a timeline to see themselves out?
Right.
Or do you want to be like, get the heck out of here before you steal from some more again?
Yeah.
It's almost like, I think some people are maybe just looking at it two different ways. Maybe some people are looking at this as, you got to quickly rip the Band-Aid and get bad guys out or mismanagement out. And some people are like, almost that COVID mindset. Well, these people are going to lose their jobs. Give them a heads up, give them a timeline, do it slowly. Well, it depends then on how you feel the people getting the boot, how they are, I guess.
So if we role play this and we say, let's just do that. We went to USAID, AID, and we gave them the cut expenses and whatever.
Mm-hmm.
When government is doing something for you, have you ever hit your stopwatch and noticed how long something you think takes just a couple seconds actually takes when you give it to a government bureaucrat? It takes a little while, right?
Yeah.
So the timeline that you would give them, right, would not be quick enough than me sending my Elon Musk and his 20 band of teenagers in there to do what the strategy it is. And I bet you the government workers could have never accomplished it in the short timeline that were prepped to make this call, because it would be the, keep my friends and I want my budget. And the mentality of a bureaucrat is different than you or I. They're not shopping this the same. Like I talked to a guy that was in acquisitions, acquiring products and approving contracts and buying things for the agency. And their job and goal was to spend their entire budget so that they would be allocated more the next time that they got their funding.
Yeah.
Well, that's a different mentality, because in business, if I can not use my whole budget, that is the motivation, right?
Yeah.
Because if I only have to spend 50% on something, that means I can use it elsewhere in a better place. I don't go then waste 50% of my budget on things that I didn't really need so that I get more money next time. And that's the mentality. They're not looking, I don't think they have efficiency in any of the culture of the bureaucracy, because they are looking, like, if they could say, can we hire 10,000 more people, even though we don't need it, so we can justify it? I think that's exactly the mentality that they might have.
And another interesting thing too, and I appreciate Julie sort of being the other side of this and giving us some more to think about. It's interesting too that the people that didn't like sort of just going in gangbuster and getting rid of it also did not like the idea of Musk's email. Because to me, sending an email that says, hey, I want you to send me 5 things you did today, or 5 things that your job entails, or whatever, just reply back to this email. That was not him going in and saying you're all fired regardless. That was him giving a heads up, giving a notice, looking for feedback. And they didn't like that either. Would that not have been a little more like on a timeline, or maybe sort of dipping a toe in rather than sort of just bull in a china shop?
So who would respond that way? Because I could say that if you've been slacking and somebody starts paying attention to you, that's the way that I would react. Someone looking over your shoulder all of a sudden, like, why are you looking at me?
Yeah.
Well, you'll trust me?
They either get angry, or you also saw cases where they just quit. I'm not doing this. I'm quitting.
Mm-hmm.
Bye.
Yeah.
Like, it's probably who needed to quit then. Yeah. So to me, it's not even so much the way Musk is doing things. I don't think people are going to like it regardless.
But as a taxpayer, he's not supposed to go in there and be nice to people and be accommodating and be a good leader to them. He's going to go in there. And so let me just share what I would do in that situation. All right. So if the first question that you had around your boardroom was, we hired a bunch of employees that we didn't need to pad job numbers, how many of these people are actually paying attention during a workday? Let's send an email out just to see who's even alive, who's still at their desk. Because those ones would be easy first cuts. If they're not even checking email, they're not active, employees.
Yeah.
So let's put a, do you like clouds email together, right? Just to see if I get bounce backs. I'm like, holy shit, like, we've been paying somebody's salary and they're not even there. Easy cut across the board.
Yeah.
Second thing, there's a lot of people who haven't been doing the job, maybe took on a second job and collecting 2 paychecks kind of thing. They're going to get mad when we start looking at it. And government employees are hard to cut anyway. The ones that weren't even weren't even alive were easy to cut. The second realm of them, government jobs are hard to cut. They're backed by a union, and unless you have cause, we don't know anything about what these people do and who they are. So let's make some of them angry a little bit, so they just see themselves out the door. So first round is, are you alive? Cut. Second ones, are you getting angry when somebody's looking at your paper? Cut. Now we've gotten and trimmed maybe half of the people off of the equation with a simple 5-sentence email. Now we can get to the third level where we look at the people and what the merits of their job are, and if they work really hard. And now we can take our time because we got 50% of the dead weight off the board. I think it was kind of genius. It had nothing to do with leadership style, because Elon's not going to be their boss after 2 months of doing this.
Yeah.
It was the first scrape to get rid of dead wood.
Yeah. And she says, how do you know the lieutenants that are acting right now are not corrupt?
You don't.
Because I believe they are. Right.
You don't know. And that's the election put in power the guy who gets to put, like, we're no longer in charge. We have taken our representative and put them there, and they're going to do their thing now. If they're corrupt, then the next time the person comes, this is the way our system works. We as voters don't get to micromanage what they do once we put them there.
Yeah.
Right. We can put pressure on them. Like, if we don't like it, now we're not going to vote for you, and we can skew them between elections, but he's not running again. Right.
Yeah.
He's got 4 years to do what that was a question before you voted for him, not after you have already voted.
And those are two big points I always agree with too. One is you put someone in power knowing full well. I don't think anyone questioned whether or not Elon Musk was going to be involved in a Trump presidency. It was clear. He was still elected knowing that he would put these other people to work in a specific way. Number one. Number two, it's funny. Julie said nobody voted for Elon. So to my point, there are many, many people working in the federal government that we do not elect. We elect the person that hires them.
Should we say the civics thing?
Yeah.
Should we the civics thing?
Well, we're gonna stay nice and respectful, but yes, it's we did not have to elect Elon, just like we did not have to elect Anthony Fauci. They're put into their position based on who we did elect. Number one. Number two is, and now I'm trying to think of, we don't know if they're corrupt. Let's say, a lot of people are saying, well, Elon Musk or his band of teenagers, whatever. Well, what if they're corrupt? What if they're going to steal? Okay, that's a very good possibility. So let's look into that. Number one, why would they? Do they have anything to benefit from it? And then number two, let's see what if we're saving a bunch of money from all these cuts, where's the money go? So let's be watching that. What are we doing with all of a sudden the extra money that we're finding, or cutting the money that's been bleeding out? I did see Elon in an interview recently. He was saying how people keep saying he's going to go and steal people's Social Security or something. He says there's about what was the number he gave? 10,000 or more different federal workers that have access to your information on a daily basis. Thousands of people right now have access to your information other than Elon Musk. But I guess we're cool with that. And he's like, do you honestly think let me go and steal your money, I can finally buy myself something nice? Does he have motivation?
Okay, so let me fill in the philosophy and where you should arrive, because this is a principle question. Mm-hmm. Okay. So if the nobody voted for Elon thing, right? Is this a new phenomenon, or was there a previous Elon where an unelected official was able to do that? Okay. So cool.
Yeah.
If we don't like when an unelected official has the access or right to do something, you go to the legislature and you form a bill that says nobody has access to things if you're not elected. The only people who get access to stuff is elected. Then we change it. Now there will never be an Elon. But if you benefited when your people were in power by unelected officials creating bureaucracies that benefited you, had no problem with it, the inconsistency is now the person you don't like, that you don't trust, all of a sudden has access to the same data. That's an inconsistency that I don't listen to that anymore. Yeah. So again, I would respect it if you were like, yep, we're done with that. We don't want people who we can't get out of there when we don't trust them. having access to social security numbers. And the second inconsistency is that if the truth or the fact or evidence is what you were all about, like elections were completely secure unless you have evidence to say the contrary. So is Elon Musk is stealing stuff? I would say, well, Elon Musk is not stealing stuff unless you have evidence to the contrary. So stay consistent on the level of scrutiny that you have for people. And I will say, I am suspicious of everyone. So I can't say that Elon Musk isn't going up to a terminal, putting malware on a system, and then has a little red button. And he goes to Trump and says, you do what I want, or I'm going to release this malware. So there better be some kind of mechanism that keeps unelected officials honest so that they have some oversight, some people looking at it. So my response, I'm in the press pool now. I'm going to say to, what was it? Caitlin is her name?
Yeah. Caitlin.
Okay.
Caitlin,
whatever. So I'm like, hey, what oversight do we have on Elon Musk, and how are we paying attention to the things that he's doing so that we keep that group honest? And then she can say something that says, oh no, there is no oversight. They're just going to do whatever they want. Or they're going to say, oh no, we have a whole nother bipartisan group of people who can watch what they're doing to make sure that the Democrats are in the room. So they're wise and they can keep an eye on it, just like we would do with the tabulation of votes. They put 5 Republicans and 5 Democrats, and they watch the vote counters and make sure that nobody does anything bad. Right. Yeah. And it keeps everybody honest in the room. So anyway.
And then when you have the checks and balances in place, then do you then trust them? For example, again, Julie, thank you again for interacting with us.
I want to respond to that too.
Yeah. Quick. So they were vetted. Well, I saw an interview of Elon Musk that directly stated he and all of those young people hiring him went through the same process, the same checks and balances as any other federal worker. They were vetted. And
he has a higher security clearance because of it. He is more vetted than the normal people who get to look at that data.
They got looked at more than the thousands of other people that have access to your information.
So Julie, I think that you carry yourself really well on social media, and I love the way that you spar on there, but you have a lot of inaccuracies as part of your philosophy. My suggestion is be more open-minded, and I like your critical ability, but you're slanting and, so easy to poke holes in what you're saying there. And I like you, and I like your ways about you, but you need to look into it. And
again, Julie, we really appreciate you bringing up these topics because they are said by so many people and believed by so many people. So my question would be then, if you say Elon Musk and his people were not vetted, and then you heard actually they were vetted, they were probably more scrutinized than anyone else. Yes, we made sure this was legit. Do you then say, all right,
okay,
I'll give him a shot? Or do you still push back because you just don't like him? And if your answer is, I just don't like him, that's okay. I'll give you that. I don't care if someone says, I just don't trust the guy. Okay. I can't make you trust someone. There's been people in politics that I had no reason, or even people in real life. I got nothing. And I think don't trust them.
I think the cynics are very valuable as long as they use it to push, just like the press in the press poll. If you don't like the guy, then be hard on them and make them respond. But when they respond, be honest about what they gave you as a response and be honest about it. And maybe have your mind changed. Maybe Elon isn't as evil and corrupt and scamming like you think he is. And once you find the answers that poke holes in what you thought you knew about him, be willing to dial it back a little bit and be on board. But don't change your cynicism. You don't have to become an Elon Musk fan, right? But you don't have to be blinded by your hatred for him where then you deny the truth.
Yeah. And to me, I feel like and then we're going to get to Justin's comments because I don't know what he's talking about. But I did the same thing with Trump and I got hate for it, to where I basically started looking into some of the things Trump was being accused of or called, the names people call him. He's this, he's that. And when I look into examples to the contrary, do I have to still think he's a great guy and let's give him a high five? He's such a sweetheart? No. But he's not what you said he was.
Exactly.
He's not this.
You were wrong is what it comes
Yep.
down to. And, I will accept you back to the reasonable plane and give you a pass. You got a mulligan. Like it's
Yeah.
very easy that if you read the mainstream media and you buy into the narratives that I too could have some hatred for people, but because I'm a cynic, it carries over to anybody who tells me something. I want to make sure that I have it right before I just turn around and use what I just heard as fact. Because more times than not, the crap I heard was not accurate. And have I pinned my integrity on something that I heard, I would have been embarrassed as hell.
And the person who gave me that false information has something to gain other than the person that's being accused of it. Who is Blue Ball?
And it's Big Balls. Big Balls. That one of the band of teens that were part of, and I call them teens, they were adults, but
They're
the young adults. His name was Big Balls on social media. So when they did the story about him, they had to refer to him as Big Balls. So it was kind of cool to watch.
I did hear about that. They wanted him to say Big Balls on the news.
Yeah, because they're all immature people is what it comes down to.
Yeah.
But I'm around tech people all the time. That is the standard for tech people, is that they are socially awkward and they are immature as shit.
And at this point, speaking of being immature with the media, at this point, I can't even blame them. There was a time where I would have said, what children? You're so childish. But now I see, like the guy in the Oval Office that made the snarky comment about the suit, like some of the people you see during Caitlin, whatever Leavitt's press conferences, I almost want to say, let them push back, because the media is allowed to be childish. The reporters are allowed to be idiots.
Everybody's doing it.
Yeah.
So might as well play that
Why
game.
not give them pushback?
Let's see. Levitt was asked about this, and her response is, I will get back to you. And I'm assuming this is about the security clearances. I will assure you, as the director of SpaceX, he has to carry that. So if you say that you don't believe the fact that he carries those security clearances, it is 100% certain that he has to have them in order to work on behalf of NASA. So regardless of what the press secretary said, he has to do that. And number two, if he did scam, if he did anything nefarious, he risks losing the SpaceX's licensure, and he loses an entire company. It does not make sense, for the sake of stealing people's social security numbers in the social security database, they would risk losing his companies. I give it a single-digit probability that you are right. And I want you to be reasonable and come off of that and just admit that he has all, in just this one element, that he has the security clearances to look at a arcane database that the government has, knowing that he's probably not hijacking information out
especially
of it.
When, let's see, who's reporting the things about Elon Musk that you want to agree with, that you want to say he hasn't been vetted, he doesn't have security clearance, he's evil, he's going to steal money. Who's telling you that, instead of telling you about Nancy Pelosi's winery that's funded, or Chelsea Clinton getting thousands of dollars for some charity that they don't even know is still active or not, or any of these other things that are getting money that may be either a little seedy or just needs to be inactive. Maybe was good for a while, but it's no longer in business. So let's cut that because it's wasteful. Why would you only focus on, here's a guy that could potentially be a jerk, and so let's not look at all the things that you can prove are happening? Yeah,
I'll give you. Let's just. And Julie, I hate to pick on you, but you're doing a great.
We appreciate you, Julie.
You're doing a good job here. I want you to respond with the same. I want your response, Julie. This is just for you. This goes out to Julie. This is Love Lines.
We love you, Julie.
So in the State of the Union speech that Trump had the other day, he specifically mentioned, I forget her name, she got a $2 billion subsidy. She owned a nonprofit, and in 2024, the entire year, right, the revenue and the donations for the nonprofit were $400. And in 2025, the second transaction was $2 billion. Okay. So far it is $2,400,000 is what this charity has had, all government incoming. Now, I want you to take the same kind of skepticism and say, do you trust that this unnamed lady had great intentions and there was no scamming, there was no nefarious, corrupt intentions on this one. If you can say that, right, then I can list hundreds of those same kind of trough moments where equal to at least what you feel about Elon Musk is provable and happening in this calendar year. So that's for you, Julie. I want to see how you respond to that.
Who oversees him? Jessica says, whoever is that him is what? Elon?
Elon, yeah.
Who oversees him?
That would be a great question for the press secretary to see what the chain of command is, who is in the room, making sure that we can trust what's happening. The president trusts him, got executive powers to have him do it, but the taxpayers and the voters would be more comfortable if he had an overseer as well that could be in the same room with him. So I'm equally as interested as you are, Jessica.
And it's interesting too that we have this Doge organization now that has a website. They always say we go line by line and we put it up on the website and you can look up these things. Is there, I guess, like a site for government spending and things that we can actually see what they're seeing?
Is there governments? Well, there's a probing committee in the legislature that they have the ability to take a look at things, make the ethics committee. It's not the ethics committee. It's accountability office, government accountability office. They are the overseers. Now, again, if they were the overseers and they missed everything that's being found right now, how good are they at watching whatever? So I wouldn't trust you put the people who are responsible for making sure there wasn't waste and corruption are there and Elon. Who am I going to trust more? I'm going with Elon only because he's new. But if you took Bob from accounting that used to work in a fab plant, I would trust him more too, because these people obviously were terrible at their job.
Yeah. And again, you've got to trust somebody at some point. Obviously, you think someone needs to do these things. So then who is it? And what makes sense? Like, is it the million billionaire that in no way needs your money that doesn't have to do this? He doesn't have to be under such scrutiny and have people in his business all the time and sending him hate online and hoping his companies fail. And he doesn't have to be in this position and he doesn't need the money. Why would he be corrupt? But then you start to see the sources. Do the sources telling you that he's a bad guy benefit from telling you he's a bad guy? And then check it with things like, for example, a lot of mainstream media would call RFK anti-vax. He himself would say, I am not anti-vax. Who do you trust? Somebody in the media says Elon Musk is a shady bad guy. He's like, I'm not a shady bad guy and I can prove it. Who do you trust? Just like when Kamala Harris was campaigning and was having a rally and there was a protester there, a pro-Trump protester at her rally spouting off about God or church or whatever. She said, you're at the wrong rally, because they were clearly a Trump supporting protester. What did the media do? Kamala hates God. Kamala hates Christians. No, she doesn't. You put your bias because you have an agenda. So who do you believe? The person with an agenda telling you to be fired up, or the person saying, that's not true. That's not true. And I could show you it's not true. Then let him show you and trust it.
Yep. Julie says Elon and Trump are scuttling the Verizon deal that was in direct competition with Elon. He has incentive to work within this government. And again, the origin of a question, right? And a curiosity to see if you have evidence that that's what's actually happening. But it'll always be in the specter of lack of evidence, but I think that's probably happening. Yeah. And all it would take is one instance of corruption. That's all you'd have to do. Elon's a bad guy and he kills his competition and just wants to amass power so he can sell more Starlink dishes, or he can sell more space launches, or he can secure more Cybertruck deals. That's fine. If he's done it, it would be, again, we're going to go back to it's sacred until you have evidence theorem, like elections, like COVID, like global warming. Have evidence, present it. And the minute that happens, I'm going to turn my over here. Elon's corrupt. Get rid of him. He has nowhere near. But until you have the evidence, it's all just speculative. And it's the origin of a thought, but bring out some evidence.
Yeah, absolutely.
But have oversight. Like, I don't want anybody, because you don't have evidence, like the elections are sacred and whatever. I don't have evidence to the contrary, but keep paying attention. Keep trying to dig up some evidence. And if you can't, then I will feel better that you really tried to poke holes in it and came up dry, versus you didn't try at all, because how dare you question our election? How dare
you question me?
Exactly.
And that, I feel like that whole mentality this election season, I think, just worked really well for Trump. How dare you question?
Yeah, Elon isn't motivated. This is by Julie. Elon isn't motivated by money. He wants power, evident in his meddlings in other governments. Again, that's an opinion, and I don't think that. So all you'd have to do is float a piece of evidence in front of me.
Yeah.
And I could change my mind.
Does that mean then the person who was doing the checks and balances and looking into this and auditing things before Elon was ever in the picture, is that person also possibly corrupt and only wants power? Do we even know who that is? Or
is there anybody in the government sphere that is not trying to accumulate power? So the people who want power, right, are amongst everybody who wants power, and the least likely to be motivated by the power is the only guy that you are scrutinized.
Yeah.
That is in both accounts.
And let's be real. Both sides obviously want power.
Yes.
If you want to make change happen, if you want to do things a certain way, or change it or affect it or be reelected or whatever your motivation is, you need the power to do that. Everybody wants power. So are they going to use it for positive change?
Okay. So what if it's not power and influence? Right? Are those virtuous?
Power and influence?
Power and influence, yeah.
I think they can be.
Okay, they could be.
Yeah.
And you can be effective if you have power influence. When does it become a bad thing? Like, what is the bad version of power and influence? Because I'm going to make a connection with projecting here in a second.
Yeah. So it's bad if you're like, I'm going to use all my power and influence to only benefit myself and make me more wealthy and make sure that no one else can take me over, and I get to stay in power and just reap all the benefits while everyone else suffers. It's all about me. Okay.
I'm going to say hostage and blackmail, where you amass power so that you can force other people to do things that they don't want to do. I'm not going to, the great thing, like, there would be too many people caught in that filter, because everybody has self-interest. So there's not a person that's going to be getting in power and not take advantage of that power to enrich themselves. So every legislator that went in with $100,000 a year salary and made $90 million, right, use their power to enrich themselves. So every single one of them, if I looked at your bank account and all you did was have equal to what you could have made, right, then I would say, oh, you didn't use your power for enrich yourself. You're one of those virtuous people who did it in spite. You could have, but you didn't. That person I would put up on a pedestal as saying, that's who I want to elect time and time again. Pretty much everybody else pulls that trigger. Right.
Yeah.
And so if Elon, and I don't think I don't think he has reason to use his power to enrich himself. I think he did a good job of that without having that power. And so, yeah.
And even if you look at Trump, is it true that Trump didn't take a salary from being president the first time?
He didn't take a salary. Yeah.
He didn't take a salary.
Proportionally, it was a drop in the bucket, and it garnered him goodwill from the people.
He doesn't need the money.
Yeah, he doesn't need the money.
Yeah, and I think that's a lot too. Is who are you going to trust in a position? Is it someone that's like, I don't need this money,
communicated saying I'm not here for that part.
Yeah.
This became I'm going to include Julie in on
this
the title
is what
of the show.
We need. We need more input. We need people who see things differently.
Power and influence becomes a bad thing when it is removed from the people. That's exactly what I said. But can you stay consistent on that one as well?
Yeah.
Like when it's in your realm and you want to force billionaires to pay what you think they should pay. With that power to be able to tell another person who's not you to do something because you want them to, you're not going to be able to stay consistent on that one.
Yeah.
But when you hijack any kind of, I'm a libertarian, right? Stay within your bubble. I can motivate you. I can inspire you to do something. But if you say no, no means no. And so I can persuade you, but I cannot, through authoritarian virtual guns, make you do something that you want to do. That is the proper usage of power.
And what's funny is you can even persuade via the groups, and why can't I think of that?
What, NGOs?
Yeah, the NGOs. To where you can literally hire people to go out and push your agenda and stage protests and even push a point that they may not even agree with. So it's like anybody can be in on this. Anybody can affect you.
Okay, so here's a power that might not pass the Julie test. So if you don't like Elon, right, and you say, hey, we don't really trust Elon, we don't want him in power, right? We don't want him doing this stuff. And then the Trump administration says, well, too bad, so sad. I mean, you had your moment to persuade me and I'm going to say no. And then you're like, oh, well, you told me no. What I'm going to do is I'm going to use my power to push the law against you, try to destroy you. I'm going to push the judicial system towards you to keep it tied up in court. Would that not be the abuse of power because you didn't like being told no, you didn't get your way, and now you pulled the lever of authoritarianism to try to get your way? Ultimately, those two things are very much connected.
That's what laws are for. That's what laws are for, and what our elected officials are elected for. Aren't they elected to then put people in place? Everyone has an agenda. It was clear when the cartel took over and tortured people. So to Julie's point, that's what laws are for, what our elected officials are elected for. So to your point, if Donald Trump was elected, can Donald Trump not then appoint people to work for him that he wants to? We don't have to elect Elon, just like we didn't have to elect Anthony Fauci with Biden. I feel like that sort of is our point.
Is there an illusion that everybody who works in the White House, every advisor, every cabinet member was elected?
I think there might be.
Like before now, maybe that's what people thought, that they were elected. If they did something, they had a function in government, that they had to have direct elections. I mean, I swear I was admonished and lectured about having direct elections just 6 months ago from someone who gave me the study civics course. And now that person would have to be on the opposite side of things and say they should have direct elections. This is not jiving.
Yeah. Everyone has an agenda. It was clear when the cartel took over and tortured people. Yeah, the whole like elected thing is just, I thought we were all on the same page. It's sort of, here's a party, not a person, a party. Here's a representative of a party. They all have their own people. You elected one. Now their people are in power. And so when did it, like, to me, this is the first year I've ever heard of this whole, we didn't elect them, we didn't elect them, we didn't elect that. No, that's not how this works. That's not how any of this works.
Yeah. But that's why I say that's the origin of the question. So let's just take a representative, somebody who's representing our district.
Then we have to address that, but go ahead.
So we, our representative here, like, we don't want to go down to Washington and go through all kind of stuff that we don't understand. So we're going to elect somebody from here to go there and represent us. So when we are going through the election process, the questions are getting to know the person, how they stand, because the decisions they make there, we want to know ahead of time what they're going to do. So I asked the dude when he's sitting in front of me and he's going to go down to Washington for me, I'm going to say, how would you handle engines in a car? And he says, well, I like this and do this, right? So then he goes to Washington and he's in a position where I'm like, oh, I know what he's going to do. This law comes down the way. It's the opposite of the engine thing that he and I talked about. And now I watch him vote against the thing that he said to me, right? So now I call in his office and say, dude, you didn't do that thing, right? I'm really mad at you. And then he says, I changed my mind, pound salt. And then we hang up the phone and I go to the ballot box the next time and I vote against him. There is all of our interactions that are legally necessary.
Yeah.
He didn't tell me the truth, or maybe most of it, though, is that we're not even asking the questions of what we're not even asking the proper questions to see how they're going to behave once they're there. We get tied down with stupid questions that have nothing to do with their philosophies and how they vote. And then we get surprised when they go off in left field and kind of do their own thing. And then we don't hold them accountable because they didn't contradict themselves. We never asked those questions about how they would behave because we were too distracted in a different direction.
Yeah,
Did you
absolutely.
have another question?
Well, Julie said, we trusted Trump to appoint Fauci and trust him.
We did?
Did we? Maybe I'm speaking for myself. I don't know anyone that thought Trump would appoint Fauci.
So Trump, the first time around, he did not scrap the previous administration's advisors. There's a lot of internal people that he kept on, and he only took a core group. Those people ended up working against him, and people in the Justice Department, in those other departments, ended up working against his administration and really hampering them. But Fauci was one that got the blessing from Trump to stay as his advisor on NIH. And so if you're going to give negative marks to Trump, you can give him that he inherited a lot of those people from previous administrations. And if they would have been scrutinized by, I want to put my own person in there, yeah, you can give them negative marks for trusting Fauci and for keeping Fauci on. But you'd assume that a lot of those positions that are supposed to be non-political, that you wouldn't get rid of the people who are just has a specialization or an expertise. But now you got to expect that everybody's compromised by politics, even if it doesn't make sense that they are.
Yeah. And that's what really sucks about it too, is you always hear these things like anybody who is the president at the time, any party who's in at the time, if anybody leaves or gets fired, people want to be like, oh, well, that really says something about this presidency. Like, obviously, whoever was under the payroll of the previous administration is going to be loyal to that administration regardless. You would hope, and it would be great if we got non-biased professionals in there, but that just doesn't happen.
No, it is proven that does happen.
Yeah.
Right? And so if we know that everybody's going to be loyal to someone else and they're not going to work on your agenda and they're going to put roadblocks if they can to help it, why would you keep those around? And do we want, are there things within government that we want to have consistency from one administration to the other? Because if a president came in and just wiped everybody out and put their own people in there, you're going to pay a price for that. There are some things like national security that if somebody's been paying attention to, a conflict over in the Middle East, new administration comes in, the specialization gets wiped out. Now you got to start over paying attention to what's happening. If I'm your enemy, I'm going to capitalize on your weakness because you just shit canned a bunch of people who knew what was going down. And now the new guy's like, I don't know, it's my first day.
Yeah. And I remember when I was first starting to get real into RFK Jr. and everybody kept saying, well, his own family doesn't support him and said you shouldn't listen to him and he's corrupt and this and that. And it's like, yeah, but he says, which you could probably look into, his family works for Biden. They are employees of Joe Biden. Like, they're really going to not say something like that. Like, they're really going to be like, yeah, we love RFK. He's a great guy. Go vote for him and support him, knowing full well who your employer is. So it's, motivation is big for me. Who's got the motivation to push an agenda or to feed me BS? And can you actually look into it? And when you look into it and you find evidence to the contrary, do you then trust it and succeed a little bit?
Now, who's really in control now? Where is the government so large with so much money that it dwarfs? It has the ability to control the voters, and the voters are just a commodity that makes this machine spin one more time. But we don't really have if the voters, if I gave this really good speech about hey, you know what, the people are really in charge, right? And I got everybody to agree with me that something needs to happen. And so that I could go then to the government and they would bow to my will because, we're the ones that make it happen. Or would the government know that they could just crush me? They can destroy me. They could erode all of my support, right? And that thing wouldn't change because they don't want that to freaking change. So if I said, I want the government budget to be $1 billion a year and I want you to shrink everything down so you're only doing national defense and I only in doing the Department of Justice and enforcing the laws. You write the laws, but stay out of everything else. $1 billion budget, go. And I rallied everybody's support, right? And everybody has given me a pinky promise swear that anybody in government that doesn't support this, they're going to vote for the other guy. So everybody who runs for stuff supports me and my deal. Would I be destroyed, or would I and us be able to neuter the government? Which do you think is more likely to happen?
You'd be destroyed.
Be destroyed. So the people are not in charge. That is an illusion.
Yeah.
Where the government just gives us the illusion that we're in control while taking the liberties and taking the say totally away from us. As long as we think we have a say and give us these little token elections every once in a while, we think we're really in charge, but really we're not. But if the government was afraid of us like we're afraid of the government, then I would argue that we're really in charge.
Yeah, it's kind of funny when you hear that one person is going to, what was the big phrase with democracy? Destroy democracy, or what were they saying? Trump's going to destroy democracy, or democracy is threatened, or whatever. It's like, if that's a real threat, for one, it's a real threat no matter who's in office, in my opinion. To me, it does not feel like the government is by the people, for the people. We are your bosses. You do what we want. That's not the case at all.
They're not afraid of us. They know they got the power to and really, if you're in a one-on-one fight, you want it to be equal, right? We're gonna have our guns, and you're gonna have your gun, and I'm gonna have my gun, right? And if we have a dispute, we know we could equally take shots at each other, and we intelligently negotiate so that we never have to fight, right? I know you're a superpower, you know that I'm a superpower, and we're smart enough to know that we never want to get to the threat of wanting to destroy one another, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you're at a disadvantage, I got my cap gun, right? And you got your cannon, right?
Yeah.
But you know that I'm at a disadvantage, but you have to pretend like when you walk up to me, you're like, oh, that cap gun. Oh, please don't ever use that against me. And I'm like, oh, I feel pretty confident that I could totally cap his ass. And he's totally afraid of me. So I keep playing the game with you because you give me the illusion that I have some sort of strength. But then a third party comes up and says, no, dude, you're at a really big disadvantage. Your opposition has cannons and tanks and airplanes, and they strapped up while you were chanting at a university campus, right? If that's your double barrel shotgun, then you're at a big disadvantage. They'll crush you, dude. And don't think that if it came down to it, if you were them, that they wouldn't finally pull out the armaments they've been hitting themselves with, and it would take you out in 2 seconds. And so if you have the democracy dies, I would challenge you to tell me what that even is, because libertarian says the government isn't neutered enough to make that a true argument. I think democracy has long been dead, and it's the illusion of democracy that keeps us still playing the game.
So you may want to address Julie's next statement.
Okay.
Come on, Kelin. We know from history how one person can destroy a society.
Could. An authoritarian could.
So I feel like a lot of people want to sort of talk about Hitler when we are in situations like this. And a lot of people, I think, want to maybe even compare Trump or anybody to Hitler and what's happening there. Do you see comparisons, contrasts?
Not at all.
And
not at all.
Can you talk about that a bit, about how sometimes I think it's ridiculous that we have to point out the differences, but
okay. So really the easiest thing to do would if you go read the biography of Adolf Hitler, the philosophies and whatever. And what I want you to do is when you get to a paragraph of something that was done, right? Say, we haven't done that part, and that can't even happen here, right?
Yeah.
So if you do have authoritarian control, so what is authoritarian control? It means that you can do something, nobody can challenge you, and nobody can stop you, right? If somebody does something you don't like, it does not immediately make it authoritarian control. Okay. So if we have the ability to have oversight so let's just say Trump says, I'm going to cancel an election, right? No more elections. I am now the person in charge forever. So what would happen?
Which I think some people think.
So the legislature would say, no, there are articles here that say you can't do this. And then they push back and says, we don't believe you. So it goes to a Supreme Court, and you'd have a unanimous support for that's not constitutional. We have elections, and we're going to stick to it. And then the authoritarian wannabe would say, oh, damn, like I couldn't do that one.
Yeah.
So as you're going through that book saying, as it is, and make notes of what we make sure that we want to make sure it doesn't happen. So if you're in control and you can make the Supreme Court do something unconstitutional. So let's just say abortion rights, not constitutional, completely political. But you have the Supreme Court who's supposed to just go to the Constitution, see if something is constitutional, and rule back, usually 9-0, right? Because the Constitution's pretty straightforward. So for there ever to be rulings that are 5-4, there's some partisans on that panel. So if you want authoritarian rule, but when you support the Supreme Court not going your way, all of a sudden you want to skew it so you get your way. That's with true authoritarians. People are mad at what's the female justice that Trump put in there, Amy Coney Barrett, right? She ruled against Trump, right?
Yeah.
So if you were to make an argument against how the Supreme Court is authoritarian, that means all of the justices never fly in the face of the current administration. How often do the liberal justices blindly just always go in one direction no matter what it is, versus how many times the Republicans dissent based on strict constitutional interpretation? It happens one way a lot more. So again, as you construct the arguments of how many things lead to authoritarianism, and if you support the things that cause that, but all of a sudden you take interest in authoritarianism, I'm going to create that contradiction right off the bat. And I agree with you. We should neuter the government and make things less partisan, make it strict constitution, and you eliminate an Adolf Hitler being able to ruin everything. But if you make the opposite choices, that means you are making it super easy for an authoritarian. I think executive overreach that was done by both sides lead it more likely to be an authoritarian. I still think it can't happen. So you should say, oh, I did this and I'm making it easier for Hitler to come down. Let's stop doing this even when I'm in control. Now you have my respect because you understand the assignment. Mm-hmm. If that's truly what you're afraid of, then you do it all the time, not just when certain people are in power.
Yes.
All right. There's a reason why Jewish databases were hacked. It was targeted torture and abuse, but the info they had was bad, easy to figure out.
What?
Not quite sure about that one. I'm thinking like the databases that have all this information, they're afraid. It was hacked a bunch of times through China and, other countries. So it was not a very secure database to begin with. But I haven't heard about the Jewish databases. I don't know enough about it to comment. So maybe we have to choose whose corruption we have to choose. I'm depressed. I'm sorry, Julie. That's an important part.
Yeah.
If you support corruption when you're benefiting from it, then you've just made corruption more likely. So if you get a speeding ticket and you call up the police officer that and he pulls some strings, you benefited from, but you made more corruption more likely because you were a participant. If you're like, I got the speeding ticket, the right thing to happen is me just pay the consequences. I'm not going to pull the power lever to fix my ticket. Now you're a good participant, and I hope more people are like you, versus when I benefit from it, I take a little bit of corruption when I can get it.
Yeah, like using lawfare,
100%.
That's not fair.
Yeah. So I got a question for you. So when the Department of Justice, on first day stuff, say that I'm going after Letitia James and I'm going to go after the prosecutor for Trump's side on day one, what was my objection before? How did Trump in his investigation get top of the pile for them to look at? Right? In a blind justice system, you take your caseload based on things that get referred to you that are happening. How did that one become a priority? So I disagree that those people, I understand why they're doing it because it has been political and they're like, if it's good for you, it's good for us. But that doesn't help us get to the no lawfare game. If immediately you come in there and start gunning for the people who broke law, eventually, if the caseload of Letitia James comes down, then it happened naturally. Investigators came up with it. They came across, enough standard to hit to investigate Letitia James. But on the direction of somebody who has an end, and Letitia James name's going down because you're a political enemy. I have just as much objection with that one as I did with the lawfare against Trump. I can stay consistent on that.
And the idea of, oh, we're just going to choose the corruption. Yeah. Yeah. Unfortunately, when's the last time we had an election that there was clearly a great person with great ideas and is in the right?
Zero.
Versus the bad guy.
That's the game we're playing. If it is just a volleying of who can out corrupt one another, this is a terrible end for everyone.
Oh yeah. I can't remember the last time there was an election that I didn't feel as though I'm just trying to find the lesser of two evils.
That's right. But here, let me give you maybe a sort of like a perk to what's happening right now. So the incentive to go to government is that you get to go there, amass all of this power, and have these huge budgets to be able to just spill off to your friends and put back into the machine. Maybe the corrupt people, if they get there and they got to do real work and they got to read bills and they got to just discuss legislation, there's really no money to spend because everybody's watching every dollar that comes around here. And you can't get power because you got the people that are in power looking to remove power. Maybe some of the unscrupulous ones don't even want to go there anymore because the bait is gone. So I can't say that they're going to remove enough of the power consumption or enough of the corrupt money that spills over to do that. But maybe we get close and maybe we get a better crop of people that end up going there where they want to do good and make the world better and make it more just when they go there.
Yeah, because now anybody that does want to do all that sort of has to play this game to get anything done.
That's right.
If you don't play along, you're out. There have been candidates that I was like, why are we not listening to this person? They sound great. And they're gone after like the first debate. They have no money. They don't go anywhere because the two big powerhouses are always going to be these two big powerhouses. And you know what happens?
The evidence of this, if this starts happening, the only way that we're going to know is that we are not going to feel like watching C-SPAN anymore. There won't be idiots in the gallery who do dumb shit. It's going to be a bunch of people who are smart and they're just talking about laws.
Yeah.
Like they're just talking about policy. No one's fighting anymore. They're compromising. They're making deals based on finding common ground with people. I'm not watching that shit though.
Yeah, they're not going to make money off of that.
They're not
going to get ratings off of that.
Exactly. So if it gets incredibly boring, then we know the right people are getting there. A bunch of people who really don't want the job, but they're doing it out of public service, and they're only going to do virtuous things. So it's going to be incredibly boring.
Yeah, and it is. I mean, I'm sort of. I feel like I'm getting to that point to where I have shut off a lot of the big news organizations, and I just read things online, and I watch interviews, and I do podcasts, like long form, unedited bits of information. And it could be a little less exciting because you don't have those jarring headlines, or you take a jarring headline, you read what actually happened, and it's far less exciting.
Yeah,
because they need that. They thrive off of that. And that's another reason, like we mentioned when we started today, the whole name calling and you're stupid and you're dumb for not seeing this and you need a civics lesson. If you think it is that cut and dry, that someone is just stupid or smart or someone is right or wrong, and you don't at least see someone else's point when they bring facts to the table, then you're the one that doesn't actually know the issue, because there is a reason it's complicated. And unfortunately, sometimes that reason is the media wants us to feel a certain way.
Let's conspire here.
Okay.
This is good. If we can pull this off, this is part of our answer.
Ooh!
Okay. Yeah. We are going to pit two groups of against one another. With one of the groups we're going to support to destroy the other group.
Yeah.
There we go. This is going to be good. Oh, I'm digging this. We're conspiring.
And we're even saying we're doing it.
Yes.
I bet we can.
This is not a theory. This is a true conspiracy.
Yeah.
So here's the thing. Arts and entertainment is dying, right? Television shows, movies, they just don't have the audiences. And you know who the problem is? Politicians. They're taking the spotlight, they're taking the limelight, they're getting too popular. Everybody's watching the news because of their antics.
More interesting.
So if you want people to watch your movies and come to your concerts, you need to end the distraction and stop making politics so damn distracting and vying
so
for
prevalent.
Yes. So I want all of the actors to go after politics and remove the limelight. I want you to fight against them and take back what is yours. We're supposed to be paying attention to you and your music and the creations that you have. These politicians are just suits. They're not even interesting. We're making them interesting because they're dumpster fires. Take it back, arts and entertainment people.
Yeah.
Take it back.
Wouldn't you love now? Gosh, remember when people back in the days of like Facebook, early social media, people started to then complain like, I'm so sick of seeing a picture of someone's meal. Wouldn't you love to just see what somebody cooked that day now, or somebody's kids' birthday party or sports game that we used to think was just so trivial and mundane, and now it's just fighting? Wouldn't it be amazing to turn on the TV and yeah, they're talking about some great movie that, you know, is so inspiring that I want to go see, or an album just came out of new music and it's so interesting. And wouldn't that be so great to surround ourselves with those algorithms?
We would save entertainment because you create new audience for them, which means now when they have bigger audiences again, they will create stuff that has more mass appeal instead of this activist crap they've been putting on the screen. And they will be able to there'll be more actors and more musicians, and we're inspired and made better by the art that they produce.
Because and it's not just the news on TV, algorithms. If you get fired up on a daily basis about something, there's a reason for that. You are being served this content because all the positive content, all the content like we just discussed about entertainers and things of that nature, literally gets hidden, and you are only shown what gets you fired up. Wouldn't that be amazing if we changed what was on TV and we changed the algorithms online to make it seem like, listen, we are so sick of the politics. We're not giving you guys any more power.
Any more attention. Yeah, absolutely.
You do what we want you to do, or we vote you out and we move on with our lives.
There isn't a single person who's been made better by watching the news. They don't go out and get the newest, greatest idea. They're just encased in that crap, right? But arts and entertainment, so much inspiration, and people are made better when they get excited. The algorithm's serving things that they go out and want to change the world and help other people and do everything that the government was competing against. This is one of the best ideas we've ever come up with.
There's some comments. Jessica says people in the arts stopped working because it was stolen.
What was stolen? The attention? Yeah, stolen by government, stolen by politicians.
Attention of the arts, I'm guessing.
Yeah.
She says negativity algorithms for sure. I akin politics to Survivors. It is fascinating to me. Survivors, the TV show? Is that what you mean by Survivors?
Yeah, but it's the worst crap TV imaginable. Have you ever listened to a song and got just like totally ready to take things on all the time?
That's what news organizations is. It's reality TV.
It is. It's theatrics and reality TV. And it's an illusion. It's not real.
Yeah.
And if you watch enough reality TV, you will go down the cesspool spiral into the worst of what humanity has to offer.
And you know what's so interesting? Oh, this is such a coincidence because I was just watching a video about this on YouTube the other day. It was a girl that I like a lot of her videos just because she does makeup and I like makeup. She went on the same thing, is that negativity sells and the internet will make you feel badly about yourself and it's nothing but drama, because anything that you produce that is positive gets lost. So that negative,
because we're in control of that. We're in control of that.
And she said, do you know how easy it is to turn that around? How easy it is. And sure enough, because we talk politics and we fire people up on the internet on a regular basis, I will do a lot of deep dives sometimes into political issues or candidates or people that are in the media right now. So when I go to my YouTube page or I'm doing a search, I am flooded with videos and shorts and reels about people fighting all the time. Yep. The moment I take just a day or two and I'm watching comedians, I'm watching my little makeup tutorials, anything like that, you then go back to YouTube. That's all you're getting. Here's a new makeup you might want to try. Check out Nate Bargatze, who I now love because of the internet, and watch your life turn around when you flood yourself with things that actually make you feel good versus what makes you feel bad, because it's being controlled. You are being controlled, whether you like it or not, or think you are or not.
Yeah. And that is your cultural vote. right?
Yeah.
You vote with the things you pay attention to, and let's start rewarding people that are talented and bring out the best in you rather than the idiots in Washington. They don't deserve your attention.
Yeah, neither do the haters online. We
Nope.
get a lot of hate online, and it's from people that don't even know us, that don't even know anything good we've done. They see 30 seconds of a video snippet and think they know something about us. Oh, and by the way, the haters online, the commenters, either one, are not real, or two, are real, but both of which benefit from firing you up and getting you to engage back with them.
Yep. All right, we're wrapping up. Thanks for tuning in, guys. We'll be back at 9 o'clock tomorrow morning. It's going to be Luke and I here on Youngstown's Talk Channel. Take care, guys.
Thank you for listening to this show on Youngstown Studio. This is original Youngstown content. Feel free to share our videos and tell your friends about us. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow us on Facebook. Thank you for your support.